All right, what's up, y'all? Welcome to Write and Chill. We got a live audience today, so y'all in for a treat. Hey, listen, tonight we have some very important people in the building tonight. We got some poets from the Slam, this series T, and they'll be writing with us tonight, so I think it's pretty dope. Tonight we're going to go with performance. I am a performance poet. My background is in theater arts. It's kind of how I got my launch into poetry, so when I approach poetry, it's a little bit different than most. So I can't teach anybody else's style. I can only teach mine. So tonight we're going to be looking at the art of performance inside of poetry. All right. So tonight it's all me. I will have no production manager. Uno is off for tonight. So I'll be driving the controls. But y'all, we got some dope people in the studio. They'll be coming in and out. But y'all put your hands together. She kicked off the show last night. It was hard hitting that first spot. Not last night, Tuesday night. It was hard hitting that first spot. She went on to do a whole, what do you call it, deconstruction of her night on IG. It was very thought provoking. It had me hooked. I was listening to each clip, and so she's here tonight. We're going to kick off tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about her experience before we get into the show. I think that'll be the perfect bridge, especially as we have a contestant. And hey, she'll just talk a little bit about her experience. Y'all put your hands together for Galaxy. What's up, Galaxy? How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm feeling a lot better.
That's what's up. So let's talk a little bit about Tuesday night. So I know you didn't want to go first. I remember from like even the meet and greet, you were like, "Oh man." I was even nervous for you when I hit the randomizer and I saw that you were first. I was like, oh, I hope she does well. So a little bit about that. I know you processed it on your IG stories, but tell the people that's watching what your thoughts were.
Okay, so basically, like going, and of course, some of this now is after, like a lot of things that I learned from this experience, but I didn't want to go first. That was like the last thing I wanted to do was go first, just because I have never done a virtual slam before.
Okay.
And it was a lot of like heavy competitors and a lot of prominent judges involved in this slam. So I really wanted to be able to see what the judges were feeling, see what the competitors were bringing, so I could kind of decide, what vibe they wanted, hear a little feedback first. So as soon as I got the news that I was first, I was just crushed. And the reason is, and you know what, it's not a really good thing to bring into another slam, but previously I had to go first in a slam and I got eliminated in the first round. That was my first time ever being eliminated in the first round slam.
Oh wow.
And so I feel like it was something that I was carrying with me into this slam. Like I was saying on my story, like I feel like I had PTSD because as soon as I saw that number one, it's like mentally I was already like, it's no way you can do good. And so I shouldn't have had that mindset, but I was just so nervous. Like I was already nervous because this is my first virtual slam. It's a lot of, really good people. And just going first just added an extra level of just fear to me and nervousness. And so I really like just spazzed out when I was doing my performance. Like I was just so nervous and unfocused, and like I was going through my piece, and before I even started, I went home and I was trying to go over it because I decided which piece I wanted to do, because I'm like, it's women judges. I want to do like a woman-centered piece that, most people like when I'm doing in front of a live audience. And so I started going through my piece and I just wasn't like, it wasn't flowing. Like, performances flow, it wasn't flowing. And then I got to one part of the poem, which is super close to the end. And I forgot a line and it sent me like into a loop. And I was like, my brain just went completely blank. Like my brain went blank. And instead of me trying to like figure out how to cut the piece and just end it or like just stop, just in my mind, I was just like, my mind was saying like, you know this. How could you forget this? Where do you say the next piece? Just say the line. And I kept saying the line like a million times over and over and over. And
Right.
that, like the good thing about that experience is, number one, I've never done that before. Like that was my first time ever having that type of slip up. like I've like forgotten lines or anything, but I've never been like repeating a line or dropping a line and like going back. Like I said, I feel like I was like glitching or something like that. But I like talked to a couple people and they just really gave me some insight of like how you just cut your piece and move on. And the crazy thing about that poem specifically is the poem is called Period. And the last line of that poem is period. And I could have just said period and just ended it all, but my mind was just going a million times an hour. It was just such a crazy experience, like looking at yourself at a screen, looking at like seeing the judges' reactions at the same time, like trying to gauge what you're doing, trying to see, like, even now I'm looking like I'm backwards. Like the way my hands are moving is not normal. Like when I move, so it's just all of that adjustment. It was like just a wave of just everything.
So I will say this virtual slam is definitely different from in-person slam. And so I think performance, that's why I wanted to teach performance tonight. I think a lot of times we get in here and we do a lot of poetry teaching, but we're already poets. And I feel like writing is not always our dilemma. Sometimes I think it's even the delivery. I think Lachelle stated for you about, you got to know who you're talking to, know your audience. And I know that that's key even in writing, but it's also in performing. And I say that to say, like you're saying, you're noticing that your hands are not the same. Even me, when I talk to you, I can't really look at you. I have to look directly at the camera if I want you to feel like I'm talking to you. Like I don't even see you right now, but you don't know that. But if this was a performance, I would know that my camera is my audience. My screen is simply the view. I won't be able to see myself in this at this time. And so it's that idea that you have to take with you when you go into virtual slams. You can tell people that have done virtual slams a lot because they kind of know that. I think Tamara Blue gave someone that advice as well. Like it's random, but you kind of look above your monitor. A lot of people do it from their phones, and you can't look at the screen. Mm-hmm. You have to purposely look at the camera, because if not, sometimes it can read off as if you're reading. I think Carness, during his season, he had that same problem where he was looking. I think he had his family in the room, so he was like performing to his family while the camera was just there, and it didn't read as well to us watching. It felt like you were not looking at us; you were looking at something else. Were you reading? So it kind of gives that. So you just have to know what your body is doing virtually. You know what I'm saying? I didn't get a chance to watch Chev and Nick all, but I know Chev, I met him during the pandemic. He did a lot of virtual slams. That's how I got to know him, doing virtual space. So if he slams in real life too, but he mastered the virtual scene of slamming virtually. All right, y'all. I think we got somebody else in the room. So this is also a contestant here on the slam. His name is Stephen Logan. I want to bring him in queue. Give me 1 second. All right, Stephen, you ready, bro? All right. What's up, Stephen? How's it going, man?
You still in the hood? I heard all that good wisdom you was dropping there, sir. I was talking. I'm like, I'm still in the back room.
That's what's up. But no, we were just kind of recapping Galaxy's experience on the show, and I think that tonight would be a good topic because we're going to be talking about performance. And I think when things like that happen, performance becomes a very big part of covering up mistakes, and virtually and in person. I think in person it becomes a little bit more edgy because with that slam, you're looking at more of a time restraint.
Right.
They especially I heard you state you're going to WAPs. So going to WAPs, it's going to be very strategic that you get your timing. And so if you try to make up, it may cost you time. So a lot of times they say don't cut your piece to where it's perfect. Make sure you go in 20 seconds, try to cut it to like 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Just to give yourself a little wiggle room. You don't know how the crowd is going to react. You don't know how you're going to react. It just gives you a little space so you could actually breathe through the piece, run the piece a number of times recording it. But you know, that's just some tidbit information about, you know what I'm saying, planning. And I do have slides. So I want to kind of get into that. I did want to kind of do a little introduction. Steven, did you want to say anything about your first night at the Slam?
I do. I'm gonna be honest with you. I made it through. One of the reasons why I did the Slam was because I it's been so long since I performed on stage or at a poetry slam, and I've been getting tugged for so long in my heart. Like I really want to get back and come back, make a resurgence in the poetry game, poetry scene. So first night, um, I hate being the very first poet and the very last poet.
Oh, that's
First
good. We do
poet,
got the first and the last tonight.
so yeah, absolutely. That's interesting. So I hate being the first poet because it's not so much I hate being the first poet. My mind when I first started doing poetry, I hated opening the show first where there's a bunch of artists. One because I was insecure. I was just coming up. I feel like as the first poet, no one's ever listening to you.
Right.
Even if you calibrate it, if you have the host open with a poem, no one is really engaging with you. But then that's how you learn how to demand that they listen to you. So
Right.
like a lot of times what I've done is, and I'm getting all over the place, but you learn how to just sit there and be quiet until they just, oh, he wants our attention.
Right.
So, but I text JL like, hey, dang, I got last. All right, cool. And the reason why I don't want to go, I don't want to be last is because they've been so poetry wasted. By the time they get to you, it's just like, come on, man, let's get this.
But Steven, you did really well. You were definitely one of the top three. So I don't think your logic, you know what I'm saying, rocks. I think in Slam it becomes totally different. If you paid attention to when Black Chakra spoke for Series 9, when he gave the analogy about the kick to the chest or the kick to the back, I always looked at it differently. Pretty similar analogy. I describe it as either taking your breath away or putting air into the room. And so Slam becomes more strategic than it is just about is your poem good or not. It depends on who did you follow. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I don't know if you see some poets like a poem I did as so-and-so following Ed Mabry. You know what I'm saying? Because now it makes all the difference because it may be a different feel based on what it is that person did in the room. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So whenever you come to a slam, I think you should be ready in two directions. You should be able to take the breath away and you should be able to breathe air into the room. All right. I want to introduce this by I want to show a clip. And it's going to kind of preface where we're going to go tonight, talking about performance. We'll talk a little bit later, but her name is Anita D. You may have seen this piece before. It's very popular. At least for me, it is. Her name is Anita D. She's a phenomenal poet. Let me see. Here we go. I'm sorry. This is all me today, y'all. Here we go.
And the psych ward says, there is no need to worry. This asylum was built to help you. And just like the straps on the stretcher that you rolled in on, we are going to keep you safe and secured. Notice the locked doors and all the cameras perched in the corners like hawks. We will be watching, but this is all for you and your well-being. You are sick, anxious, depressed, a danger to yourself. The state told us to hold you for 72 hours, but if you sign this paper, we can pretend your stay here this weekend is voluntary. Friday morning, you will be woken up by strangers in white coats and clipboards. You will be asked again and again and again about why and how you want to kill yourself. Be honest. Remember, you are only here for 3 days, so take advantage of the 5 to 10 minutes you have with the doctors. But understand, he has a list of patients as long as his pay stubs. So you won't be receiving any actual therapy sessions while you're here, but we will recommend them as treatment for after we let you out. Until then, we want you to be comfortable, so sit back, enjoy the plastic furniture and coloring books. We have old radios with no antenna, but the static is still loud enough to drown out the sound of the woman screaming in 2B. That's just Cindy. She just does that sometimes. Well, she didn't always, but she does now. And until we can find the right medication, we are going to keep helping her. Just like we want to keep helping you if only you'd let us. It's Friday morning and you haven't even tried the meds yet. You're still lying to us about holding the knife to your arm like your parents haven't already told us everything. Just be honest and let us help you. Did I mention that the state only recognizes the existence of psychiatric patients Monday through Friday? Meaning the past 48 hours you've spent here didn't even count, meaning we still have time for a breakthrough or a breakdown. This is a good thing. This means we still have time to help you. And I can see that you're getting upset, but do not walk away from me with tears streaming and knuckles buried in palms. That type of body language is aggressive, and we might have to do something about that. A sedative, maybe diazepam. Perhaps I don't think being alone is best for you right now. Maybe you should spend time with the other patients. Get to know how they got here. Listen to them when they tell you got lucky getting placed in this psych ward. We are one of the good ones, and we want you to stay here. We figure if we keep you long enough, maybe you'll eventually start to fit in, or maybe if we keep you locked up, you'll eventually start to act out, and we will be right here waiting to prescribe you something to label you with the diagnosis. We didn't cause your social anxiety. We only heightened what was already there. We just want to see you reach your full potential as a patient. We told you this asylum was built to help you.
All right, y'all. Let's talk about it. Uh-oh.
Okay, so we want to just have like an open dialogue about the poem?
I do. Hold on. How do I stop? All right, here we go. All right, my bad, y'all. It's all me. I'm driving by myself today. So I think this is a perfect clip to kick off tonight, especially since we're talking about performance. So that was Anita D. She did about her weekend in the psych ward. And so before I started running off, I want to say, what did you see that she did in this piece?
Okay, so the thing that I noticed most, and it kind of like coincides with the feedback that I received from my performance, was she didn't overly use her hands. Like most of the time, her hands were not moving, but the piece was still powerful. Like you could still feel the emotion and the inflection in her voice, and that was moving the piece forward without her doing a lot of hand motions. So
sometimes the hands can get in the way of what you're doing unless it is a part of it. And again, hands read differently on screen than it would be if I was in person. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, because
I'm lean in.
Still trying to do right.
That's why when I gave the note to practice in front of your computer or screen, whatever you're going to slam in, or record yourself, because your body looks different on screen than it does in person. And so you just got to know what does what. I think that becomes very key. Like the lean in means something, the lean back means something. Sometimes the look off, the side look, it's all kind of different things. You have to know how the camera is getting you. Your lighting is important. Your wardrobe is important. Like everything speaks to the piece that you're doing. All right, Stephen, what did you notice with the piece?
There was a lot of character in her face that spoke as well. So like even with she spoke a lot through her eyes. She had a lot of, even though she's using her words with her mouth, there was a lot of language being spoken with her face, to where it's like she's one with that poem. It's not just, it didn't come off just like, I'm reciting this. This is me. This, like I'm one with it. So there was, I did take note to the facial expression, and what she was conveying, not just with her lips, but with her entire body as well.
So the poem is about her weekend in the psych ward, but who did she use to tell the story?
It was like in third person.
Huh?
It was like in third person because she wasn't saying I, she was saying you, like you will get this medication.
Right. So she spoke from the perception of like the workers at the psych ward in a sense. Right? 1 second.
Yeah, I guess that's like second person instead of third person.
No, he's third person.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
All right, my apologies. So yes, she spoke from the perception of like the psych ward, and so I thought that was a good take because now it's like, I want to talk about my experience in the psych ward over the weekend, but I don't want to just sit there and make this a sad story. This could have very well been a sad story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of was eerie, but she made it more interesting. She made it more clever. So it kind of speaks to how Lachelle says that, you know, many people have said this poem. You now have to find a different way of stating it.
Mm-hmm.
That simply is now the angle in which you take. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And it was very brave. Sometimes we don't want to hear it from somebody else if you're the person that went through it, right? But I think this was a very wise move because now she was able to make us now her. You see what I'm saying? Like we felt everything she felt. She began to project on us what she experienced the whole weekend. These are probably real things that were stated to her, you know what I'm saying, which made it seem so much more believable. And so I think that becomes the first part in performance. Who are you? Who are you? You have to know your character. You know, spoken word, I believe, is a little bit different from poetry in my regards, because A, yes, it is storytelling, and B, with that comes with the character. You know what I'm saying? So, like, just looking at Steven right now, like he gives me airline, like you know, what you got people that serve you. I'm drawing a blank right now.
I mean, you'd be right because I do work for Southwest, so there's that.
Right. So
Yeah.
your clothing speaking right now. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying everything about you. And so if you did a piece about being homeless without a job,
It wouldn't speak to it.
you say you just got laid off, your shirt is telling me you're still working. You see what I'm saying? Like your clothes is contradicting everything you just told me. Now, other slams, be careful taking this outside of J.O. Speak Slam because some do not allow you to have props. And so they will call prop on you. Since I'm a drama connoisseur with my slam, like, you know, I don't really, you know, I allow people to do whatever they want to do. It's the freedom, even with the time. Now, the judges may feel otherwise, especially on that poet's role. Looks like it was a little lengthy. But it's definitely an open game because my goal is to gear the poet in connection and collaboration with clients to take poetry, not just to your nearest slam, but to create this as a business, as a job, to teach you how to barter your contract, to seal your deal, you know what I'm saying, to write for clients as well. And so that was kind of the back end about how I got into creating this slam. But that was just putting a point in because I heard you say you're going to WAPS Galaxy. I don't want you to get so performance heavy and props and get all this in mind, and then it does not go well. You like what J.O. said, you know. And so with that, I think with Anita, so I feel like had she done that at a poetry slam, I don't think they would have called prop on her. And I think it was probably why she kept her stance very, very straight and just hands down and was here to let you know this still is, you know, I'm still performing, but I'm not like acting. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm gonna keep it to a minimum. And I think it was very wise, you know, because it was just more of a head gesture and more of a on the eye, the face. And I almost find it more, you use your face more when you find like you can't use your hands, because now I have to tell my story. And if I'm that person that accent things, like I've lost something. You know what I'm saying? I've lost my hand. So now I got to do more with I got to speak with my neck. I got to do some shows. I got to lean forward. I got to lean back. So I think even in performing, try to do it differently, not just with voices, but even with movements. Play around with the movements. Some movements may just come naturally, you know what I'm saying, than others. Some may be forced. and working through that, you know what works and what doesn't. All right, let's get into some slides so we can have a guide. That's what we're doing. So this is where we're at today. Jo Speaks, Write and Chill, a class on performance. All right, let's get to the first slide. So everybody knows to kick off a story, we have to have an outline. And so that little thing in the corner is what you saw in school. But crazy about it, it always becomes something that I can find myself utilizing even when I write. So there's many names for it: plot outline or plot skeleton, universal plot. Some people just call it the basic structure, but it's just the outline that you'll use. For me, you know, and even when I'm writing, it's the basic outline for story. But again, being a performance writer, more of a storyteller, I kind of use this, the exposition, the beginning. I think at that point, in spoken word, you really got about 5 seconds to let the audience, the listener, know who's talking, who you're talking to, and what's the problem. You know what I'm saying? If you can get all that out in your first 5 seconds, you're good. How do poets do this? Well, I think on our night, Nick did it with, I don't know the line verbatim, but he was like, for poets who have considered giving up when the slam wasn't going well. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm sure that's not it, but that's the idea. Y'all were there. So he told you who we're talking about. We're talking about poets. We're talking about what, they're at a slam location. And these are poets when the slam is not going well. This is for them. So already before we start driving, I already know where we're going, and I can decide if I want to go or not. You finish? So I can decide if I want to go or not. So I think it's very good in the introduction to introduce self, situation, and setting if you can. The rising action. The rising action is just kind of now bringing you to the climax. If we use Anita D's poem as an example, her climax was her getting in. I felt like she didn't want to eat. She didn't want to talk to anybody. She just kind of wanted to be to herself. And so she was steady being bombarded by this lady or this person in authority to talk, to get to know, to do this, like really challenging her to get out of this bubble. And so I think the climax, if you notice, it's that point. And I think that's when the story changes. The story changed for me with hers when she was like, the guidelines state that weekends don't count. So you're in here until, the weekend is over. So you might as well open up, get to know each other. You know what I'm saying? Like, we want to help you. You might as well take the medicine. So to me, that was the climax. Now I have to accept something that I don't want to accept. And then the falling action more so is coming to a resolution. This is where some poets stop at the climax. You see what I'm saying? And it's this cliffhanger. And they call it this cliffhanger because you've taken me up and you just left me there and you did not settle it down. You know what I'm saying? And she almost gave us a little bit of a climax. She gave us a climax with a cliffhanger. I don't think she really brought us back down. We don't walk out the psych ward with her. When we leave the poem, she is still in there. You know what I'm saying? The only hope we got is that she was the one that was there and we're looking at her. You know what I'm saying? But I think that becomes even more of a powerful, because I don't know how it's going to end. You know what I'm saying? I've given you all this build up. I've given you where this thing has changed. Did I change or not? You know what I'm saying? And sometimes that becomes a challenging move. So I did want to use that and kind of utilize her poem against this, because I think storytelling does become a powerful way of introducing any poem, especially, in slam, because it's something easy to follow. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you get personnel and you giving me, especially when you're the person that we're following. Here's just some examples of stories. Very basic, so we can build on. So you start out with the characters. I was saying, let's call him character X. This character finds himself in trouble, does his best to get out of it. However, everything character X does only seems to make trouble worse. It sounds a lot like Anita D's poem. Like, no matter what she did to kind of calm herself, stay to herself, just try to get through the weekend, it was always something, this authority figure taunting her. You know what I'm saying? Take the medicine. Oh, Cindy, that's just Cindy in 3B. She just always screams like that. She didn't always do that, but she does now. And until we find out, we're just going to keep trying. And it almost is alludes to like, what if these people really didn't have problems? What if y'all made the problem? What if you are the problem? Journey. She hits the light on you are the problem. All right. Sorry, guys. I have a live audience today. When I say live, I mean live. So I think that becomes important to know with your audience. Do I want to resolve this? Do I want them to feel good? You see what I'm saying? I didn't feel good. This was not a good feeling for me. I did not like being trapped in the psych ward. I am not crazy. These people made me feel like I was crazy. Now, had I just told you this, then y'all probably would have thought I was crazy. So I can't even tell you from my perspective, because then you're going to be looking at me like, y'all, she crazy. You know what I'm saying? But if I now put you in my position in this story, you know what I'm saying? It's left up to you to be like, hey, that's a little eerie. That's crazy. Like, what if that happened to me? You know what I'm saying? And maybe that was the goal she was going to. Maybe she was now like pointing at psych wards and how they're ran. I don't want this to resolve. I'm writing a poem right now for the water district, and I've been there a few times. And it's about legacy, but I want to tell the story about missing girls. And a part of me wants to answer the call and be like, but these girls are not missing. They're found as doctors and lawyers. But then a part of me is like, no, that makes no sense, because now I feel like we're just washing over the situation again. Now you get to walk away from this poem feeling good. And I don't want you to feel good. I want you to walk away feeling upset. I want you to walk away feeling like, what can I do about it? You know what I'm saying? And so I think you got to make those decisions as a poet. What do I want this poem to do? And so I know we're talking about performance and we're building a lot on this outline, but I think the performance comes with the character. And you have to know, what do you want this piece to do? One, because it's going to now dictate what do you want this character to do. You see what I'm saying? I think if we would have saw Anita D's poem just written out and have never heard it, I don't know if it would have read as well. Correct. I don't know if that would be a book poem. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. But the performance to me drove it. It was her inflections. It was her taking us into the psych ward. You see what I'm saying? And not just telling us about it, but we experienced it. And so I think that's what performance does, is it helps you to experience. And so I would say this, Galaxy, to your piece, it was very hard for me to follow, because of course I'm a man, I've never had a period. And so something like that, you have to now give education. You know what I'm saying? And again, Anita D, I think she did it flawlessly, because she's educating even at the same time of moving it forward. You know what I'm saying? She's giving you rules. You know what I'm saying? Like diazepam, maybe something will calm you down. You need to calm down. Don't put your hands like that. That type of body language is read as hostile, and we might have to do something. So she's giving you the rules as she's correcting the behavior, and you're feeling all of it. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so I thought it was, again, very wise, because now it's not just her nagging about her experience or crying about it, but it's her now explaining it from a different perspective. And so whenever you're doing that, you're setting your character. Who's speaking? Anybody could have spoke. We could have heard this whole poem from Cindy and 2B that had been screaming the whole night, but would it have read as well? You see what I'm saying? So I think you got to figure out who's better to tell this story, And even though it's you, the speaker is probably not always the writer. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You could have told the story from your brother's perspective, him experiencing you, maybe the boy in class that was upset with you when something happened. You know what I'm saying? Now that gives like the people that don't understand a little bit of information as to what it is. And it challenges you as the writer. I now have to answer questions differently because I'm talking to my brother. And so I can't just say what I want to say because I'm not talking to him. to my mom. No, I got it. No, I can do it. No, we're almost done. Chase, go to sleep. You have a meeting tomorrow. Go to sleep. This is why the slam is late, y'all, because I try to avoid this. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. Here's just a bunch of different examples, but every story needs a plot resolution in order for your reader to feel like their time wasn't wasted. This was kind of like something I pulled from like novel writing, and so again, you want to know if it is something you want to flush out or something you want to put a pin in. All right. She keeps running upstairs, and she's waking up the other kids up. Hold on one second.
Galaxy, how have you been?
You said how have I been?
Yeah.
I've been good. I'm actually hosting my first slam in my hometown. So I've been like gathering poets to come perform. So that's been really fun. I only have 3 spots left now, so I'm excited. It's my first time curating this type of event, so it's gonna be fun.
Okay.
But
I can appreciate the fact that you were the very first poet. Most people, it's kind of why I said what I said, and I'm someone that needs to learn how to shut up. But a lot of times people don't take criticism good, and I think you saw that in the.
that.
Some people don't take criticism good because the reality of it is, some people believe their own hype. You know what I mean? And I get his point though about wanting to make sure that we don't dismiss ourselves based upon a judging or dismiss our ability to write or of a poet or how we see ourselves based upon how we were judged or critiqued. But I think as poets we can never approach this space, slams or these individuals. I don't think me personally, I don't think we can ever approach these spaces as if we've arrived to teacher and never be student. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Jay, go ahead.
No, you're good. I'm glad y'all was able to talk while I had got Journey situated.
Yeah.
So Gallus, I heard you're doing your own slam. Congratulations. When is it?
It's going to be on March 4th.
Okay, March 4th. Sounds exciting.
Yeah, it's a little fun. It's a fundraiser for me to go to WAP. So I figured, what better way to raise money than to give other poets money in the process? So
Is there other way? Can people sew into you even if they're not going to slam?
Yep. If you want to buy a ticket, you can buy a ticket to the slam even if you can't come.
And you can donate it to somebody else?
Yep, and you can just donate if you want.
How much are the tickets?
The tickets are $15.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds good.
You.
So I think, and every poem again does not have to follow this model. Again, this is sometimes a model I use loosely. Sometimes I play around with my introductions. Again, it depends on who's talking. Everything will read differently based on the character you pick. Sometimes the body still can sound the same, right? And then the ending. So I always see my pieces in 3 parts. So I'm a Christian poet, so mine normally have resolution. What I noticed when I took my Christian poetry and I started slamming with it, I had to almost drop off my resolution because my resolution always became Christ. And not that I wanted to drop the Christ part out, I had to then filter more of the Christ in the body of it.
Right. Do you feel like it became predictable when you did that?
Not so much. I was always creative with it.
When I say predictable, when you had a resolution, do you feel like because you had a resolution in a Christian poem, I know how this is going to end from the audience perspective?
Yeah, I mean they can, but I mean you know it's going to end well, but sometimes you don't know the route to well. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like sometimes there still could be a turn in the well. Sometimes the well cannot even be like a 10. It's like you know, I've heard people say, you know, today I'll just get up, put my feet on the floor, and stand up, and that will be okay. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not even about to walk out the house, but just be able to sit up and put my feet on the floor is a feat, and that becomes like a yay, but still like a sad because it's like he's not all the way healed, but he's trying. So sometimes it could be that like there's a win, but it may not be the big win that we wanted. So, you know, but even the win could be even more emotional, like, but he seems okay with that. And okay, yay, you know. And so I think it's those things, it's those personal choices you want to make because you want it to leave a certain something at the end, right? I think emotion carries a lot when you deal with character. I think when you deal with it in that regard, you have to know what your voice is doing. I remember taking an acting class in high school. Acting was my thing, and we were doing a Raisin in the Sun. I played Walter Lee, and I remember that I was yelling all the lines because it was an argument between him and his wife, and he wanted this license, this liquor license or whatever, you know. And so all my things were yelling, yelling, yelling. And in high school, I was like the best actor. They loved me. I did this part. Whenever that part was done, it was me. So I started acting outside of high school. I wanted to do it professionally. I remember going to my first audition, and here I am just yelling every line. And the director was like, whoa, 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 what are you doing? And I was like, he's mad, he's angry, he's arguing. And they were like, well, why are you yelling? And I was like, because I'm mad, I'm angry, I'm arguing. And he was like, no, is anger only loud? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, can anger be silent? And I was like, no.
Yeah.
He's like, can it? And so he was like, you know, we had the high school version. He said, D those eggs, but we said, forget those eggs. So the line was, forget those eggs, forget all the eggs there ever was. And then she said, well, then go to work. Well, I yelled it, right? And so he showed me, he said, how does this sound? Forget those eggs. Forget all the eggs there ever were. And he just took it down and just drove it. And it was that little bit of a nugget that showed me that anger doesn't always have to be, man, forget those eggs, forget all it. That's powerful too.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't always have to jump up there to get my point across to be angry. Mm-hmm. And so I think it was that dynamic to show I can play anger in two fields. And so I think character speaks loud as well in performance. Yes, Stephen.
I was gonna say that was a nugget right there.
Thank you. Yes, Stephen.
I think that actually helped me because, as you know, I got critiqued last night about coming off slammy. I don't do slam poetry. I shift from spoken word Christian spaces just like you, Jay, and I may have done maybe 2 slams my entire time doing poetry. So when I'm getting criticized, and I'm not criticizing the judges, but they're saying, yeah, this sounds slammy. I'm like, when I wrote this. I wrote it with that frustration. So, and then I think that's the other thing about being at 12. You listen to people say, oh, the passion. And then you misconstrue passion with volume, but the volume comes off slammy or angry throughout the entire piece. Right. And I think that was a good point that you brought up, that I can attest that, you know, I could be angry or frustrated with Donald Trump, but it doesn't have to be a loud or boisterous anger. You know what I'm saying? It could be tone. It doesn't have to be volume.
And I think sometimes when it's tone, it speaks even more volumes because now I'm not the crazy yelling, screaming person. I'm now very calm and quiet and just it's a different eeriness now. Like, oh man, this is like even Anita D, how she had the levels and different type of craziness, and you knew when. You know what I'm saying? You just saw this person outside of her. It was to me, it was phenomenal.
Yeah, it seemed like she was kind of switching. Like she'll be like da 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 da, and now,
and it was and that was all a part of it. And so she's taking you on this ride, and I think that's the thing. And there was conflict. Conflict comes before the climax. So if we go back to our slide, the conflict is one of the last rising actions, right before the climax. The conflict is what changes things. So your piece has to have a conflict. Often when I teach this, I say your piece has to have a villain. Every good poem has to have a villain. It's something that I am fighting against. And so Galaxy, looking at your piece, and I didn't even know I was going to kind of use this tonight, but I would encourage you to go back and figure out what is the villain in your piece. Like, who are you fighting? Every good story has a villain. With Anita D, she was fighting the psych ward, the system, or this lady or whoever this person was that was not just letting her chill out and wait till, you know what I'm saying, Sunday or Monday to get out. This person was just on them, like, no, do this, do that. You might as well talk to them, do this. And they were very happy with it, which made it even more weird. Like, you're not even taking my feelings into account. And so I think it's those things that you have to get. I think sometimes the villain is you. Maybe you're wrestling within yourself. But I think every good piece has to have a villain. Every good story has to have a villain. The villain becomes your friend because it pushes the story to the end. You see what I'm saying? Without Jason chasing you, you're never going to run. You know what I'm saying? Without all the mean stuff, you would never know that you could fight and do all this crazy stuff to defeat him. So it was the villain that brought that out of you. You see what I'm saying? And so I think the piece has to have a villain. Stephen, in his piece, Donald Trump was the villain. And so that just because now sometimes you got to be careful with timepieces now, because what if your villain isn't current anymore, and he isn't scary anymore, and he isn't like whatever, and so that becomes the risk you have to make. You got to figure out who is your villain. And so another nugget I would say, when battling in slam, you have to figure out, it's really like a battle of the villains almost. You see what I'm saying? It's almost like, all right, so this was their villain. Let me do this one. When I was on the other app, we had a prompt. It was called Monsters. And a lot of the poets loved that prompt. And there was a contestant by the name of Aunt Donna. She always thought outside the box, right? Some of the contestants use things like Sesame Street, and they name like these monsters, these furry animals, and they put them in real life, like people you would see in the neighborhood, you know what I'm saying? But Aunt Donna did something totally different. She just sat on the couch and she just sat there real calm for a minute after she started, and she grabbed this bottle and she said, "This is my monster." And at that point, she said a lot. Like, I knew from the first sentence where she was going. She had a bottle. She was looking like she was intoxicated. And she talked about how this monster broke all the trees, all the limbs of my family tree. And so I knew at that point she was going to tell me how alcohol tore her family up. So I'm riding with her. So I say that again to say it goes to that beginning, that exposition, to make sure you set your character, your problem. And if you can set your villain up right then, you have done everything. Bars piece. You know what I'm saying? This is for poets who are considered quitting when I guess their slam scores wasn't high enough for them to keep going. The slam score is the villain. The poet is the person. His piece is about this poet getting through a bad slam score. You see what I'm saying? I already know what this poem is going to do. I can ride with him. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Stephen.
So you believe, and I heard you say this. I just wanted you, if you can expound upon it from the introduction. You said 5 seconds.
If you can get it in 5 seconds, because think about it. Watch your favorite poems. I would say watch your favorite slam poems, since you're in a slam. Watch how they kick off watch what they do with their first 10 seconds. Watch what they do with their first 10 seconds. If I don't know what you're doing in the first 10 seconds, you probably not. See, what happens is writers, we write. And sometimes our piece doesn't start when we started writing. So true story. Y'all can go back and I did my testimony piece. And
yeah. And Jay, I want you to know that, and I ain't not to gas you. Whenever I get back to spaces of writing, I revisit that piece you're talking about.
Thank you. And so it's funny because where y'all heard it start, there was literally like a whole page of writing before that. I think I found it and I threw it away because it didn't even sound like the same poem. But I was wrestling. I had all these metaphors. I had all this randomness, all these similes, all these double entendres. And then the one line where I was transitioning from my intro, as I called it, into my piece, to where I said my innocence was stolen at the tender age of 6. And my dude stopped me. He was like, Jay, I don't know what you was talking about before, but that's where the poem started. And the show was that weekend, yo. And I was like nervous. Like this was not virtual. This is on stage, on big stage. And you just took half my poem away. And I'm just like, no, it did not start there. So I did the natural thing. I tried to take everything and put it back in. It didn't fit, especially when I started there. Like this is too deep to put this fluff back on. I can't go back to all these weird and analogies. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And so it shifted the character. It shifted it totally because this was hello. My innocence was stolen at the tender age of 6. I am not me anymore. I am the 6-year-old now. You see what I'm saying? I have to tell this story now from the 6-year-old perspective because they don't know anybody else. That's what I just gave them. I got to tell them why his innocence was broken. You know what I'm saying? And if I got to get to me, we got to now grow me up at best. You feel me? Yes, Stephen.
Do you take that approach with every poem or just slam poems? The 10-second
A
rule.
lot of my poems are personal, so I always take it with most of my personal poems. Now, we are writing for clients. This prompt, I feel, is a little bit different because it gives its legacy or here making my ancestors proud. And so I'm writing a legacy piece, making my ancestors proud. So I think to me, it has story in it. I don't think we can talk about ancestor without giving story. I need to know who this ancestor is. I need to know why this ancestor is important. And even though it becomes a tribute, I still think the ancestor needs a villain. Everybody may not agree with this. This is just my way of writing. Y'all can eat the meat, throw away the bones. I can only teach me. I would still, just me, you know, that poet's role is different. So I don't know.
It is. Very, very.
So I personally love a good villain. That's just me. I have to write with a villain. And that's why even if I have a prompt with something as simple as something for the water district, I can't just keep everything running flowy, watery. You know what I'm saying? Like I need to find a villain. You know what I'm saying? I need to find a problem. And so I think that becomes the goal. And you want to answer the problem. Or maybe you don't. Maybe your piece is just to bring awareness to this problem. You know what I'm saying? Before you write, you got to ask yourself, what do you want this piece to do? Sometimes you don't even know what the piece you want it to do. Sometimes it will tell you what it wants to do, you know? But yeah, that's that. I think for intros, you know what I'm saying? Maybe you could choose one approach to grab the audience attention right from the start, unexpected, emotional, or simple. So when he started, you know, he definitely referenced more of like for colored girls who have considered suicide when the rainbow wasn't enough to make them smile. So for me, and maybe it would have been cliche, but had I, you know, another idea, maybe I would say, since that was the intro, if I was this theater buff and I knew that's where that came from, I would be looking for maybe the lady in red, or the poet in blue, the poet in red. You know what I'm saying? But even when he took the body parts, that was still dope as well. You know what I'm saying? If we analyze it, I would say I don't see how he got the connection, but I do get the fact that he's giving of himself. You know what I'm saying? Emotional. You got to give people a reason to care. I think that has to be something, whether it's just the content itself. Anita D, she's in the psych ward. You know, whatever. It's simple. I think simple becomes the point so that it can be concise. I think as poets, we get very long-winded. We get very deep in the beginning. I think we need to say it and then explain it. And maybe in the explanation, while we're painting this picture, utilize those poetic devices as needed, not just because this is dope, this is a bar. is it needed right now? You know what I'm saying? Do I need to make this more gruesome? Why am I making this more gruesome? You know what I'm saying? I'm making this more gruesome because I'm about to show you that I had to come out of this. This is a part of the villain. He needs to be ugly and scary because it's this. You know what I'm saying? If it does not do that, then I can't do this. You know what I'm saying? And so I think those are the key points when poets or judges or people listening, when they ask, is the piece moving forward? It's asking, did you jump over one hurdle? What was the next hurdle you jumped over? You know what I'm saying? I think in the piece we should jump over at least two. We only got about 3 minutes. I think we should jump over at least two hurdles, right? Just to give two sides. Maybe everybody didn't agree with this first hurdle, so maybe they'll agree with the second one. You know what I'm saying? So it just gives you a better chance of making your point. It becomes very slam is very strategic. I know people who would change their entire intro, keep the body, and maybe even change their outro. You got to almost see your poems as puzzles if you're going to slam effectively, because you don't know what the person before you is about to do. And if they just talked about how they were abused and used and left and forgotten, you can't come back with the same one. Or if you do, you got to figure out, how can I tell the same story but differently? You see what I'm saying? I read this book called The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And I thought it was dope because he romanticized slavery. And he told the story from the young boy's perspective, which gives it this innocence. He likens his mom to being a water dancer when really she drowned. So he made beauty of things that were not, I hope I'm not spoiling the book for someone, but it's deeper than that. But it's just, I'll just use that and stop there. I like how slavery would never be romanticized in our minds, right? But he did it, and he made it romantic. And so that was an approach I had never seen. We talked about romance in it, but he romanticized slavery in and of itself. And so I think it's those approaches you have to play with. You may not always run with it, but in the drafting part, while you're plotting, you're talking about your characters, your villains, the conflict. Ask yourself, who's telling this story? You know what I'm saying? Why do they get to tell it? What will happen if you know what I'm saying? If the big bad wolf told the story about the three little pigs, would the story be a little different? You see what I'm saying? And so it's those approaches to ask yourself, who's talking? Who's telling the story? And why? And so I think those are a few little nuggets. I don't want to take y'all too long. But I felt like that was my slide. I did want to go into the piece to workshop, but Modesty didn't come, so I don't want to workshop the piece and not really know the character. I would definitely need her here in order to kind of go through it effectively. But before we close out, is there anything y'all want to say? Any questions y'all want to ask?
That was very helpful. I really enjoyed that. I learned it was, that hour went by so quick, but I think the clip and then going through, I think the most impactful things that I'm going to take away are like hand motions and tone. Like I know people tell me like I need to improve on my inflections, but the example that you gave was helpful. That the example that you gave about conveying anger, that was like a perfect example, which was like really helpful of how to convey different emotions without being like loud. Because I'm always that person that's just going up. Like I don't utilize my lows a lot because I don't know. That's just I'm just a yeller. But seeing that example is like, yeah. I really took that one a lot.
And I would say with that, play around with your pieces, change the tone. Try to see, what if I did this comical? What does it sound like? What if I did this angry? What does it sound like? What if I just did this straight face? What does this look like? play with it, because you might find like, yo, that works for this part here. And how do I segue? And it becomes something you're playing with. And even if you do that to even older pieces, it may give it a different character. Because think about it, even the human brain, like even when we do the slam, everything is with a purpose, how we change the boxes, how we bring the things around, because we're all looking at a screen. So things have to move. And it's not always our hands that have to move. Our voice can move.
Right.
If we slow down a little bit, it makes you lean in a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? I slowed down for a reason. Like I needed to draw you in. You know what I'm saying?
And I think my Achilles heel is that I feel like if I slow down, I lose the emotion, I lose the impact, and I had to change that thought. And I think that's kind of what the hiccup was when I was number 12, watching all the poems be the way that they were, and I was back and forth the entire night. Do I come in hard to give this passion, or do I just come off Dear Donald Trump and then climax my way up to my frustration? And I was like, you know what, I need to perform this. So for me, if anything, tonight did what I prayed it would do, give me an understanding of how to approach this prompt. Because
and so what I would do, so Stephen, what I would say, and again, just play around with it. Sometime, to me, I mean, we've already moved past it now. The Dear Donald Trump dated it to me, for me. You know what I'm saying? What if you would have did more so like Dear White?
I had a piece.
Same poem, but now you got a different perspective based on my first line. When I say Dear Donald Trump, it dates it a little bit. It's kind of like, okay, this is some poem he wrote a while ago. Let's listen. You know what I'm saying?
And I could have used every aspect of my poem. Then nothing would have had to change, but I'm just addressing white supremacy said of him. That was dope. Yeah, I see that.
So you got to be careful if something dates things. And I know what I want to say, but I need to use another metaphor because he was a metaphor. So I need to use another metaphor. And so I think those become the thing, especially when we bring up old poems. You can revamp old poems. You just got to figure out what dated this poem. You should have changed. Maybe your angle, maybe your perception on life has changed. So now your villain is a little bit different. Or maybe your villain is even worse. Maybe you realize you are the villain. You see what I'm saying? So it's all those things that you can play with. But I think you should outline. I never do it. I think it'll be neat to do. I have kids. I probably won't be able to do it for a while. But I've seen people put like sticky notes and play around with like even the structure of their piece. Like, what do I introduce first? What if I introduce this first and then this? Like, what pushes what? What if I told this story backwards? You know what I'm saying? Like all those accoutrements to see what can I do to make this piece really hit. And I think one thing I like about the Poetry Slam, you're going to get real feedback. I think our partners, our homeboys, our homegirls, they not going to give us. They going to be the cheerleaders that we need them to be. Like, yo, that was dope. Like, you killed it as always. Like, yo, and they gonna be sliding on to something else. Like, yo, but what you doing later on the day? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's good for us because it allows, and I was talking this about Galaxy. A lot of people don't know how to receive that criticism when it comes. So for them, it comes off judgmental. It comes off as like a putting down of what you put your heart into. For me, I always believe that no matter how far I go into poetry, there's always room to be a student. You know what I'm saying? And I've watched 8 and I've watched 9. And I've watched I even watched the calibration poems get criticized, and even watch them be like, oh yeah, okay. Right. There's an openness and humility for it. So you're talking about the people that you got one of the brothers here that was on America's Best Got Talent. You had Prentice Powell last season. You had Carness. You had people that done that. You've had people on these platforms to critique us that, they know what they're talking about. You know what I'm saying? These people have won awards, been on some of the biggest stages, and I'm not. for me, I approach it is what can I receive from them to be a better writer? Because slamming is not just proving that you're the best writer, but how can I take this experience to make me a better writer? So
Yeah.
even if I don't win, what did I walk away with?
Right. I think slam helps you understand the audience and how to move the audience. I think slam
Absolutely
is something you can use if you are at the Grammys or something, or you are emceeing, right? And it was just this big church. I'm sure you've had to go up at odd times. And so if the spirit is high, you got to figure out, where do I go? Like, how do I get this vibe? Like, most times when they put me in banquets, I always go up while people are getting food. They're like, all right, and while you guys are eating, we're gonna have a poem. And I'm like,
I've done that too. I
compete with food. You know what I'm saying? And so sometimes you gotta address the elephant in the room. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it is just a little talk. That's a feature. That's not a slam. But I'm just saying it helps you. I have to shift the attention now. And I think that's what slam does. And so when you go to WAPS Galaxy, make sure your bag is big. Make sure you have some poem that's gonna hit you in the chest, that makes you be like, oh my God, and you're gonna have something that hit you in the back to where you leaning forward, like, give me more. And because you don't know when you're gonna have to play either one. Some people mess up, they say, I'm doing this poem, this poem, and this poem. And they're not listening to anybody else. Just go up there and they just do their poem. Now that's the beauty of going first, because you set the standard. You know what I'm saying? So at that point, you shouldn't feel any type of way. If you do a good job, you're probably going to get a good score, because the judges are like, oh, I can't go low because I don't know what everybody says. I can't go too high. Now, you probably won't get a 10 because they don't know if people are going to be better than you, but they'll give you a 9.5. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want to throw my 10 out too soon, because if someone is better than you, where do I go? You know what I'm saying? But I think that's just you. You're your own competition at number one. So if you could just get through the poem, you know what I'm saying, as Seb would say in his piece, you would be great. You know, so don't last to speak to yours, Stephen. You just got to do opposite of whatever the person went before you did, and think of yourself as a closer. Like, you're closing the show. And when you look at it as a show and not a slam, it takes a little bit of the pressure off you. So my testimony piece, that was, I was the first one, Galaxy. I was the first one. They gave us a lineup while we was there. I was already nervous because, as you know, I had rewrote like 2/3 of my poem. God decided to take even the ending the day I was rehearsing it in the park. I am literally running through the park, asking people for a pen and paper just so I can write this ending down. And I am trying to piece all these things together. I want to say my wife called me right before I went on stage, and she was just like, oh my God, I didn't hear the poem. How's it going to go? And I feel like terrible wife. And I'm like, I can't talk. I'm trying to remember this piece. I am about to go up, you know, and everybody's excited, laughing, joking. And I know my piece is not exciting, laughing, or joking. And so my first line just crashed everybody. Like, they was in. And a lot of it, like you, what y'all said it, like the silence, Stephen. I think I just stood there for a minute. In my head, until they came to a certain level, and I just looked up, and there was a lot of emotion, and I just wanted it straight. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to do too much. I didn't want to do too less. I just said my innocence was stolen at the tender age of 6. I let the words do all the work at that point, because I knew that my piece was about to go everywhere, and I needed to start it. I wanted to start flat. You know what I'm saying? Because you have questions. You don't know why the innocence is stolen. Where was your protection? Where was your parent? You know what I'm saying? All these questions are coming in that one sentence. And that was in the first 5 seconds. You know what I'm saying? And that poem went viral. So it's very important to, again, know what you're doing with the first 5 to 10 seconds. Now, given that, that poem also got me eliminated. I lost the slam because the content, everybody didn't agree with it. You know, so it becomes that thing. So knowing your audience. I knew when I did it that it wasn't going to go over well, but as a Christian poet, I don't think solid Christian, not saying that you're a solid, I didn't do well as a slam poet being a Christian poet because I get to these points and I'm just like, who do I want to please? You know what I'm saying? And I know sometimes pleasing God is not pleasing man. And
Correct.
so in slam, you got to be able to please man because you go. I knew walking in, this is it. You know what I'm saying? I was like, hey, it's not even about anything else. So, you know, you got to know what you're doing. You got to know what you're doing, why you're doing it. I think those are key important things in slam, not to lose yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because I think more importantly, when the show is over, when the stage is taken down, when you've gone home, will you be able to look at feel like you did what you needed to do? It wasn't about the score. Are you really passionate about your cause? And if that's you, I think it almost shows when it is. And maybe, Stephen, that's what they would say when it was slammy, because it wasn't personal. It was just a poem that I knew would win. I think that's what they meant when they said slammy. This wasn't something I'm passionate about. This is just something I know is a good poem.
That's how it was presented to him.
I'm just wondering because that's what it could be. I'm not them. I'm just trying to make sense as I'm speaking. Because in slam poetry, people want to see you. I say this often. Don't forget yourself. People want to see you in the process.
I can see that. Yeah.
Speaking to that point, that's one thing I was kind of mad about because I told myself the last time that I went first, if I do this specific piece, because I know that the chances of moving on is harder when you go first. So it's like, I'd rather just do this piece because I know at least it's going to show a really good side of me and I'm going to have fun doing this piece. And instead of going with that plan, I completely switched the plan to like, which plan do I feel like the judges are going to like more? Or what do people, when they usually see me, request, you know? And that was kind of the thing, like when you say like, just do you, like, just go back to like pleasing yourself and doing it for you. And that's like the mindset that I just like feel more comfortable sticking to now, because I know at least if I had done the other poem, I would have just been like, oh yeah, y'all remember me, you know, like y'all see what I'm about, you know, whether it went the same way or not, I would have still just felt better.
Right. Always go with what you feel. I feel like that's what you're going to emote naturally more better because it's where you're at. Mm-hmm. When it's forced, people feel it and they don't believe it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And that's what they mean. Like it was not genuine. So I think that's the key when you are making your selections. Where am I at? What do I feel? What does the crowd feel like? You take that moment to really take it in. You take in the idea of what has happened before you and things of that nature. But I think more so overall is take in the fact of where do I, and where do I want to take this piece. So I appreciate y'all for rocking with me. This hour did go quick. I'm sorry about my little one. She wanted to make her cameo. So she was here. So yeah, but I look forward to hearing your piece, Stephen, on making my enemy proud. Hopefully tonight helped you a little bit. I will say memorize if you can the most.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question.
More.
Yeah, I never try to read the piece. It takes away from the emotion. It takes away from the realness and the authenticity of it. Because now it seems like you're reciting a piece versus becoming the piece. Like let them see you, see me. So I haven't read a piece in years. What I was going to ask you a question. When we're doing these things, I think it's also one of the things I noticed is key to kind of pay attention to what the judges are saying. And in your honest opinion, do you think it's better to sit down and do a poem or stand up? Because I know I heard Tamara Blue say, y'all don't sit down and do these pieces. I said, well, here we go. I guess I'm standing up. So.
I think standing up, you do have more. You have more movement options. I can go different places.
Yeah.
But also it can be distracting. So it depends on the piece. If mine is a very sad piece, very solemn, maybe sitting back or something, I can do like this, and I can talk to you like that because that's the vibe. You know what I'm saying? maybe it is just very like, let me tell you this, man. But if I'm telling you about something exciting and a big day, and it's not really fit. Maybe I need to stand up, you know what I'm saying, and lean in. And it depends on the character and the tone of the piece, I would say.
Yeah, and I believe if I stood up, if I sat down doing that piece, I don't think it would have been as impactful to the
You gotta know.
I doubt that would have been impactful. It would have definitely impacted how I performed.
It was angry.
How'd you say?
Because it was an angry poem.
And it's funny because they say it felt like you wrote it for a slam, and I was like, and I didn't even write it angry when I first wrote it. I think what caught me up was overthinking the criticism that I was watching from other people.
Well, dear Donald Trump or dear white supremacy, that's angry already. Like you can't start that's not happy. This isn't Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. You know what I'm saying?
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like in my mind, I wrestle with there's no way I can start dear Donald Trump like solemn or it's just like I wanted you to know all.
Yes,
I wanted you to know I have a problem with you. Like
that's where you're. So no, sitting down wouldn't have worked.
And one last question: is there anything that I personally can do to not make myself sound? Because I know one of the criticism was, and one of the things I did learn in last night, everybody had a completely different critique. Nobody I don't know if it's because of the uniqueness of my piece, where other people were in their lives, spiritually, politically. Some people felt like it was too long. One person felt like it was too long. One person thought you gave a master class. Other person thought it's too slammy. Other person said I didn't connect with. So it was hard for me to kind of. So when I left the slam, I left. Okay, I got a decent score, but like man, like it felt like a roller coaster. There was no constant. I can walk away and say all judges said this about it.
I think just the fact that just need probably. I think the fact that it was older, that Donald Trump dated it. I think so. It was that part. I think Kim said it was a masterclass because I think again the night was a little slower and gaps, and so it was just probably refreshing to hear. Probably just the lineup and such. It was a professionalism. We knew that you were comfortable with that piece. I'm trying to think. I think the slammy probably because it was that aggressive one tone style. That's kind of what maybe Tamara Blue meant when she said slam.
That makes sense.
Up and slam, and so I think the slam poems were the big, loud, in your face protest poems. When if I was a feature at Mike and Them Lights, then my poem might be chill, more loving, or just more whatever. Like hers was like a riddle, or not as like but just like this is the problem. This is what it is, and I'm gonna just tell you, and I'm gonna let you make your own emotion. Like I don't know. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I'm just trying to make sense a little bit of it.
Right. So how do you make that switch between? Because a lot of times what happens with me, if I start off passion, it's hard for me to come back down.
It's that anger isn't always loud. It's still finding the controlled anger.
Self-control, yeah.
I'm still mad, but I'm trying to keep going. You know what I'm saying? And so if you have to pull it down some, if you don't want it all on the team, you can't climax a climax. Once you up there, you can't go up. You know what I'm saying? Like singers. They got to save the high note for the end. Because once you take the, I don't sing, but I can imagine once you take the octave to your highest octave, you're there. So you might as well say that to the end. You know what I'm saying? You got to know I can only get here. So let me start off down here because I'm gonna have to da. And if I'm up here already, I can't. Where am I going? You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna run out. And so I think that's where the pacing comes in. You know what I'm saying? And everything doesn't have to end on a high note. You got to figure out what is this piece. You know? Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. I know it's late for you, man. But I thanks for the insight. Thank you for carving out this time to just help us work on our craftsman. I really appreciate it.
I never appreciate it. And next week, we have a dope writer that'll be in. with the prompt as well. So I can't even give y'all anything too much right now because giving y'all a little bit might give y'all too much. But it's gonna definitely be dope. For those that want to know, I do like one-on-one personal. Everything's on my site. I think like $25 for hours undisturbed, hopefully. But here we do this every week, every Thursday, 10 Central. Tonight I was the teacher. Next week we have a guest teacher, and the week after that I believe is Trejay during the finals week, and I think we have Chev. We're gonna reschedule him back. Black Chakra wants to come back, so we got some dope teachers. If you want to get on panel and have the opportunity to dialogue with the teacher, it's simply just $5 to hold your seat. We only have 8 seats, so hey, once they filled up, they filled up today. It was last minute on my marketing and other things moved around. But I appreciate you guys so much. I hope you guys walked away with something. It's always weird when the host is teaching because it's like, but I'm going as well. You know, it's funny. Some people don't even know because I don't do it as often. Like Soccer didn't know I did poetry.
Yeah,
like,
I saw that. I saw when you calibrated, he was just like, oh, I just thought you was a whatever.
So I thought that was dope. But anyway, every now and then I'll probably be in the seat. I got a lot to offer. But I wanted to start out with performance because I feel like that's something that's definitely even Lachelle said it. Lachelle said she's a big performance person. And so I think performance is like top notch on my list when I'm writing a piece. And with performance, you got to get familiar with the piece. It's hard to do performance if you're not memorized. Sometimes the performance help you memorize. You'll know that you do your hands with it on this, or your hands are down on this, or you look over here on that. Like certain movements will start matching with certain and you keep running through it. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes that can help you remember. You know what I'm saying? So you'll find your own little way. I don't know how everybody memorizes. I'm sure everybody's different. But again, I'm not gonna hold you. We went a little bit over, but again, I thank y'all for logging in tonight. Look forward to hearing y'all in the future, even if it's not on the slam, at your Slam Galaxy or whatever. I'm sure there's some virtual things. We'll definitely hear each other. So I'll be glad to hear you guys and see you guys later. So have a good one.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.